So we're going to start this evening, just sitting here gently, cross-legged. Taking it nice and easy. So you can use your bolster or your blocks, and really up to you how you sit. You can sit cross-legged or you could straddle a bolster, your choice, whatever is easy on your knees and your spine. We're not going to be here for terribly long. We're just going to spend a little bit of time kind of wriggling around, settling. Get nice and long in the spine. And you're going to have the palms face down, just so it allows us to calm down a little bit more. And we can loosen the jaw, just let the tongue drift away from the roof of the mouth if it's stuck there. And let the eyes close. And just trying to find a nice even space where you can sit upright with the least amount of effort, which I appreciate if you have spent the whole day hunched over a laptop. Just trying to stretch out can actually seem a bit awkward. But see if you can recall where that position is, if it's a little bit difficult to find, and hopefully your body will start to understand where it is and release a little bit. Slowly start to open the eyes. Carefully roll the shoulders around a few times. And then a few times in the opposite direction. And we'll release the legs. And we're going to make our way down onto our bellies for our Sphinx pose. Just give the back of the legs and knees a little bit of a rub. Let the blood come back through. And then ease ourselves down. Remembering that we're taking a yin class, so this is going to be very soft and easy. We want the hands to be about shoulder distance apart and the forearms parallel if we can. And then can lengthen the legs away with the feet about hip distance apart and the heels turning out very slightly. Head position is really up to you, whether it hangs or whether you hold it high or somewhere in between. Going to try and let the shoulders roll back a little bit and out wider, and then let yourself sort of sink between the gap that you've just made, the space, so the chest sinks a little closer to the floor. I try and soften off the abdominal muscles and the lower back muscles and the big muscles in the buttocks, the back of the legs. The shoulders can be funny things. It looks like we've got quite a lot of mobility. Then when we come into pose like this, we find out that maybe muscles that are attached to the shoulders, like the pectorals, aren't quite so stretchy. And therefore, when we start to let the body sink down, we've got more space in the shoulders than we've got through the chest. So as the chest very slowly opens up, you might find that we're still sinking down. And having the confidence to let go of those lower back muscles that have been holding you up in one way or other during the day. Takes a little bit of mind-body connection to focus into that area and let it smooth out. We'll move from here down a little further to the floor, and we're going to come into our half frog pose. So we're going to bring the feet onto the center line and chin onto the back of the hands, elbows out wide, wriggle the shoulders. We'll take the right leg out to start with, 90 degrees to the body, and shin follow line of the mat, toes pointing out. You can turn the head the same direction if it feels comfortable. Keep the eyes facing down to the floor, your choice. Try to let the groin open, let that front hip bone sink down towards the floor. Really good exercise if you've been doing a lot of sitting or a lot of running around. I mean running as in like physical training running. Or possibly just running around the house. Come to think of it. Now I slide the foot back onto the mat so the foot connects to the leg, and then slide the foot down on the inside of that thigh, down the shin and the calf, so the knee stays on the ground. We're back into the center, and then we take the opposite leg out. Remember, it's 90 degrees bend at the hip, 90-degree bend at the knee, 90-degree bend at the ankle. Try and let the shoulders relax a little more. As you find on the second side that the shoulders are kind of got used to the idea, and I can get a little closer to the floor. I'm just moving the elbows around a bit. And we'll slowly bring ourselves back. So bring the foot in again, slide it along. So try and keep the knee in contact the whole time. And then we can take the feet out hip distance apart again, with those heels dropping out to the side a little bit. You might want to wriggle out the hips from side to side for a few seconds. And then we'll come back up into Sphinx pose. So Sphinx pose is there as our sort of starting point. Seal pose, where you would press into the hands, lift the elbows from the ground and lift yourself a lot higher, is also available. So this is an either or option. But really the seal pose, the higher one, is there for people that have got lots of mobility, i.e. big gaps in between the vertebrae. And if you haven't got big gaps, no matter how much yoga you do, you're not going to get big gaps. You've either got big gaps or little gaps. So understanding what you have and where your body can move to is really part of the process of getting used to your body and trusting your own inner wisdom, how your body feels, where it wants to be. And just because you have that maybe extra layer of mobility doesn't necessarily mean you have to use it every time. You could choose to come into Sphinx. Still letting the shoulders relax and belly soften and the lower back, whichever pose we choose. Now we're going to move from here into saddle pose, a seated pose. You can bring the hands down towards the bottom of the ribs and press away from the floor if you wish to, or you can just lean onto one side, whichever's easier, and then draw the knees in so you come up much more gently for the spine and for your breath, keeping everything much more balanced. We'll take the block portrait, and if you need to be higher than the block, that's fine. You can use a straddle or a brick and a block, building up a little bit. As long as the sitting bones are on the prop, the knees are together and the feet are wide, you ease yourself down gently. So see how those creaking knees creak. And then again, we're just going to bring the palms onto the thighs here. And the reason that we're doing this is that we're going to be doing a bigger version of this 15 minutes or so from now. And it's just giving the legs a little bit of a chance to kind of understand that we're going to be bending them this evening. So it doesn't need to be super low. Having said that, if you need no props at all, if you can drop straight down sitting bones to the floor, then great. Less clutter, less things to organize. So we're going to lift very gently from there. And we're going to move into child's pose. So I'm going to move the block towards the front. Keep the knees about hip distance apart, so they're more of a narrow stance, and sitting gently back. Now, if you do need to keep the block between the thighs and the calves, just to help your knees, that's fine, not a problem. But you might need to use your hands to make sort of like potato fists. I'm going to see if we can soften our bodies gently over the thighs and get the head to come to the floor. Now, I know that when I'm doing yin practice and haven't done too many poses, it's a little tricky for my head to get all the way to the ground, so placing the block underneath just gives me that little bit more opportunity, the floor coming to me, for me to then be able to take my hands towards my toes. So if you've not got enough props, you can use your hands underneath your forehead if you need to lift up a little bit. And like I said, you can make some potato fists and stack them on top of each other. So we want the diaphragm to work a little bit for us. So we'll try and breathe into the belly and see how that feels in the lower back muscles, stretching out, just really listening to what happens in the body when we take the breath. And then we'll bring the hands forwards again to let ourselves come up. And I'm going to use the block again, but I'm going to pass that through towards the back this time. And we're going to come into a folded deer. So I'm just going to turn the portrait to landscape, so my bum has something even to sit on. Take the legs out in front. And you want to have quite a lot of space. I'm sort of sitting 3/4 of the way down the mat. We're going to take the left leg underneath, wrap that gently underneath so that my thigh is pointing directly forwards and my hips are square. I'm going to lean out to the left and draw the right foot back and take the knee 90 degrees to the body and the mat, and then take the shin 90 degrees again. So assuming that this knee is on the ground, I'm then going to move the front shin forwards to follow more or less the line of the front of the mat. So I've got a nice little swastika thing going on here. If the knee doesn't go to the ground, bring the foot back in until the knee is on the ground and it's settled, or put something underneath it that's going to lift it up and help it. The reason for that is we want the twist to happen inside the hip, not in the knee. So we don't really want to give it any opportunity for that to happen. I'm going to lean forwards a little bit and out to the side, and then draw ourselves round. And we're going to come down onto our forearms, or try to. And you might be able to get lower. Maybe you can get right down, get your chin down to the ground. That's fine. You might want to bring the bolster underneath the forearms so that you can rest on there a little higher. Or you might need to be quite a lot higher and have the hands underneath you and be sitting at sort of 45 degrees-ish. Again, head position is your choice. And there will still be some moving around in the pose. The body will kind of release and spring and pull and change direction for you.
we're not completely static. Every time we take a breath in or out, there's potential for movement. And then we'll use the hands to lift back up. And we'll just take it to the second side. So I'm going to use the hands on the back leg to draw that through. Lengthen the legs out. Might want to give them another little shake out. And then we'll lean over to the right, fold the bottom leg in. Remember, we're just tucking that under, so we've got that knee in position. And then walk ourselves round gently. And we'll use the hands to lift back up. And draw the legs out again in front of us. Now we're going to come into another seated forward fold. If you're able to bring the heels in towards the groin without crossing the ankles, then that's the position to come into. If not, then you take the feet a long way forwards and cross at the shins. So they're going to feel like they're ridiculously a long way away. That's where you need to be, just again, so that we keep these knee joints safe. You know, the knee works in flexion and extension. It doesn't really twist very well. There's only a few degrees of movement, so we don't want to be putting pressure in that direction really unnecessarily. But we do want to work into all of the hip joints and muscles. So that said, lay yourself to set up, whichever way you want to, and then lift your body up. So we come up onto the fingertips a little bit and fold over. And again, you can use the bolsters underneath. You can even have the bolster sort of following the line of my arm would be here. So you're almost sort of pressing it into your chest if you've got a nice solid bolster. Mine's a very dear friend, but it's seen better days. It doesn't really work like that anymore.
So just easing yourself in, again, just taking your time. Going to be here for a couple of minutes. Head position again, you can just let that drop. And we'll use the hands to walk ourselves gently back in. Let ourselves untangle the legs, because those ankles are a little bit of a shakeout. And then we'll take it into the opposite side. So generally, you would move into position in the way that you favor, just like an instinctive thing. So the second side, you want to be even more careful as you approach coming in and really sort of listen to the body to see if it's happy to go to the same place. You could do completely different styles. You could have the heels in for one and away for the other. Slowly lengthen out. And down and see where we get to.
Again, we'll slowly lift ourselves back up. And stretch those legs out. Give those ankles another little ring round. And we're going to take half butterfly. So we'll take the legs out wide and have a little rock through the sitting bones. So you can get the muscles around the sitting bone insertion point just to move around a little bit. And when you're ready, you draw the left heel in, have the knee down on the floor, take a little breath, and we're just going to walk the fingers forwards. So this extended leg, for me, tends to roll outwards as they come in. It really doesn't matter whether it's going in, out, or staying pointing up towards the sky. It's about trying to let it relax. So at the moment, it's lovely and relaxed. It feels very happy. And then I'm slowly going to let myself take my hands forwards, and I can start to already feel the hamstrings starting to work. I can feel that stretching right down into my toes, letting the spine round rather than flattening the spine. And then just taking the hands out for a little bit of support. Now, if you're like me and you feel that you're kind of rocking out to the side a little bit, just move whichever hand you need to, so you can lean into it a little bit more. So just to allow yourself to keep feeling safe, rather than working through the body, tightening things up, you can just use your arm to lean into. And we'll use the hands to lift back up and cross over to the other side. Take a little time for that leg to relax. And then when you're ready, hands are just a little bit wider than shoulders. It's a nice round spine rolling in. Adjusting the hand out to compensate.
we'll slowly lift ourselves back up. Okay, so we're coming to our final yin pose of this evening. I'm going to transfer the block, or the straddle, the bolster, I'll get there in a minute if I use enough words, behind me. And I'm going to just turn the block from landscape to portrait. And it'll be sitting on my left cheek, so the right cheek is floating. Take the hand out to the left a little bit and draw the right foot back. So I want the knee pointing forwards, and the heel to the outside of the hip, and the bootlace is down towards the floor, so the toes are moving back. And we're going to lean slowly back, so we're going to intensify the stretch through this front thigh. Now, as you take the hands back, allow yourself to just keep the chin in towards your chest a little bit, and ease yourself back. Now, rather than that coming from the spine, you want to try and lay the pelvis down and let the body kind of follow. At this point, if it starts to feel like your knee is lifting off the ground, then you definitely want to bring the other foot back in close, a bit wider than the hips would be. So the knee is still pointing towards the sky, and that should bring this heel back down to the, knee back down to the floor. To take it further, you're going to allow yourself to tilt the pelvis even more, and then start to bend the elbows. So having the bolster behind just gives you something to lean into. And if your knee lifts away from the ground initially and then comes back down, that's okay whilst you're getting in position. But if it stays off the ground, then your knee and your leg isn't really ready for this, and you need to lift up a little bit more. And that's okay, because we can do this in, almost sitting upright, sitting back at 10 degrees, 30 degrees, 45 degrees, 50 degrees. Some people get 90 degrees flat to the floor. I know it seems strange to even believe that's a possibility. But we're trying to allow the spine to sink down to the floor and the pelvis being in sort of a happy tilted back position. So we're not putting too much strain into the lower back muscles, and really focusing on letting go in the lower back and through the front thigh. And if your body is anything like mine, as you breathe into these, you'll find that it's almost like peeling layers of onions off. You keep going deeper and deeper and deeper. Muscles stretch and relax and drop. And then to come out of this, we'll draw the belly in a little bit. Allow ourselves to press the shoulders back, and then the hands into the floor to get a little bit of a lift. I know that's a little bit of a struggle sometimes. And then remember that as you lift up, you want to try and exhale the whole way through. And we'll slowly lengthen that leg out. It's going to need a bit of TLC just to bring it back to life. Whilst that's going on, you can move the block a little bit more over so that it can be on the right cheek. Take the left foot back, ease my way down. And then really in your own time, when you start to feel ready, you can take the hands back and bring yourself into position for the second side. Remember to tilt from the pelvis to draw yourself down the various levels that you want to go towards the floor. And then we start to lift again. So draw the belly in, hands into the floor behind, press on the exhale to lift up. Lean out to the side a little bit, untangle the legs, move the blocks out of the way, move the bolsters out of the way. Little rub into the thigh, knee, just help the blood come back in. And then I'm going to cross my ankles over, roll onto the shins and come up onto all fours. But whatever way works for you to come up. Have the hands underneath the shoulders and spread those fingers out wide. Knees underneath the hips. Draw the chest forwards, belly in. Roll the shoulders back, tailbone tucks up towards the sky. And then tilt the pelvis the other way as you exhale around the spine. Let the shoulders spread out wide. So you want to press into the floor a little more to help emphasize that. Inhale forwards. And exhale back. Now your breathing might be very different to mine in terms of duration and depth. But as long as you're moving with your breath, it doesn't matter if you're moving quicker or slower. As long as you are being careful not to force yourself into the end of the pose, and you take a little time to travel through. And then come back into a neutral spine, which is a little bit more lifted than you might think. We'll take the hands a fraction wider, maybe an inch or so, and then keeping the hips over the knees, press the shins into the floor, draw the belly in, take the hands forwards, and lower your chest towards the ground as low as you can allow yourself to go. Now, the wider you have the hands apart, the easier that is to do on the shoulders. And it's the upper back that we're trying to get some extension into. So we're drawing the belly in and pressing the shins down a little bit and keeping that belly drawn in. So we're looking after the lower back. Don't hold it too long because it is a very big stretch. And feeling a little bit exposed. To come out, just push the fingers into the ground and walk yourself back. So you move the hips back first. And then you can bring yourself up easily without overstretching your shoulders. Come back up onto all fours, draw the chest forwards. This time as we exhale around the spine, we're going to let that bottom sit back down onto our heels, bring the elbows to the ground, let the forehead come into the floor. Take a breath in to lift back up through a rounded spine onto all fours. Draw the chest forwards. A little bit of an exhale. Inhale on the way back up. And exhale into child's pose. Come back up. Forwards. And let ourselves remove gently back. So you might find that your breath is in one direction on one repetition, and then it changes a little bit because there's more breaths and moves. They're not an even number. So gradually you kind of work through a cycle of breath and movement. And come back into neutral. We'll take a little breath from there. Allow ourselves to sit back onto the heels. We're going to take our trusted block and just put that behind the feet. They're going to come up onto the knees and hands, and then take the feet about the same distance apart as the block. So you have a little look through your thighs. And then as you sit back, you take the knees away from the ground and bring the heels onto the block. So hopefully it's pretty much underneath you before you start. There's very little adjustment. Now we're going to keep the knees and the feet pointing forwards. They're about hip distance apart, which is a very different feeling to when we take the feet out sideways and let the knees go. It's just much more complex. I'm going to press the back of the arms into the kneecaps and then try and lift the chest up a little bit against the thighs as we letting the hips sink down to the floor. Bring the hands into prayer if you wish. Pulling your shoulders down and lifting your body out of your pelvis, keeping the belly drawn in. And then we're going to release the hands down to the floor. Lean into the hands so the heels come off the block. Take another breath. We're going to let the head come down and the bottom reach up. So we're coming to a forward fold. And just move the feet off of the block so we're still on. And then find the block and bring it through to be in front of us so we can be on not the highest end but the next end up. And then we can lengthen the chest forwards. We've got this nice chance to be in a really strong right angle with the body. Trying to spread the shoulders out wide, keeping the head in line with the body, belly drawn in. Thighs feel like they're lifting up. Lift the hips up. Press the feet down into the floor as evenly as we can. We spread the toes out a little bit. Now, just to have a little bit more fun, we're going to take a breath, take the right hand away from the block, and lengthen that out in line with the body as best we can. We'll bring that hand down and swap over to the other side. So just drawing the arms forwards, lifting it out. Remembering to breathe. It's easier said than done in this pose. Palm turns in, a little bit easier on the shoulders. This is strong on the legs and on the torso and on the shoulder. And then bring the hand back down. Move the block onto a flatter surface. Walk the fingers forwards a little bit. So we're coming into a down dog position, just for a couple of breaths. The feet are about twice as wide as they are normally in down dog, but the heels are still hiding behind the ankles. Last little breath in. I'm going to bring the knees down, either side of the block, spin the feet out, and then just sit it back gently. So I'm back to the position that I started with at the beginning of the class, where it was a choice of how you would be sitting. And then I'll take the glasses off for some nasal breathing. It doesn't make it easier to breathe, it just stops me pushing the glasses into my face. I'm going to take a few minutes of this. So I'm going to take the right hand and just bring the index finger, middle finger on the forehead. And rather than leaving the elbow sort of hanging out in space where it's going to get tired at the shoulder, I'm going to take the left hand underneath and just give it a little bit of a shelf to sit on. I'm still trying to have the shoulders as relaxed as I can. I'm going to slowly close the eyes and then use the thumb to close off the right nostril. And let myself breathe easily. So I'm going to take a number of breaths here just through the left side. I'll take the next breath in through the left. Close the nostril with the fingers. And open the right to exhale. Breathe in through the right. Close. Open left to exhale. Inhale left. Close. Open right, exhale. Inhale right. Close. Open left, exhale. Inhale left. Close. Open right. See if you can continue by yourself and slowing the breath down even further. And the last breath for the right. Final exhale to the left. Ease the hands back down. And we'll move ourselves into Shavasana. So your choice as to what props you use. I'm going to put a block behind my head and use the bolster under the back of the legs this evening. Just seems to feel like a good thing to do. If your body's telling you these things, sometimes you need to listen. Just move, if you're going to join me, the bolster into the back of the knees. And then allow yourself to close your eyes and relax. We'll start to wriggle the fingers and toes. Let the wrists and ankles join in. Take a little bit of a deeper breath and use the energy of that breath to stretch out in any way that feels good. And then slowly draw the heels back in towards the body. And finally the knees in towards the torso. You can have a little hug or a rock on the spine, whatever feels good. Just keep it small and gentle and easy on the body. We'll take a final breath here. Roll onto our right side as we exhale. Fold into a little ball as we take a breath in. And then exhale, use the hands to lift back up. We'll come into a seated posture that is comfortable. Sit up nice and tall. Let the hands come in towards the heart as we lengthen the spine, taking a breath in, closing the eyes. And on the exhale, we'll drop the chin. Let the belly draw in. A simple bow starts to form in the spine, sealing our practice for the evening. On the inhale, the spine builds again. Finally, the head lifts, the eyes can open. Namaste. Have a lovely evening. Enjoy the rest of the week. Stay safe.